magic. This is the image that I'm going to colour, and this again is from the Next Big Thing from Just Ink Lined. I'm going to be using the Spectrum Noir pens from Crafter's Companion, and all I'm using are the 6 pens from the Pale Hues set, the skin tones. Now these colour charts can be printed off from the Crafter's Companion website, and they're just colour blends. And I've printed my image off onto a pure white, super smooth 160 GSM card, and I've printed him in draft. Now we need to look at the image and see where the shadows are. So to add in the shadows, I'm going to use TN2, and I'm just going to go around where his face has got the shadows in it. So it's along his ears and in the side of his face, and where his cheeks and his eyes overhang, and along the side of his nose, and in the bits in the top of his head that would be sort of indented. I'm going to blend that in using FS3, and I'm just going along the edges where I've added the shadow. Now to make sure that the black doesn't bleed, just dot your pen over it and then just leave it for a little while to dry, and then you can blend all the colour in the face. Now on the top of his head, which would be in the light, I'm using FS2 just to blend that colour in. And I'm just going around the colour and blending it all in. Now you can blend until you're happy with the mix, but then to accentuate the shadows even more, I'm just going in with EB2 just around where the folds are in his skin. So I've added the shadow around the side of his skull and his big cheeks and along his chin, and once I've done that, I'm going to blend again with TN2. So blend again your TN2 with your FS3 along his chin line, and use your FS2 for the top of his head again, because that's in the light. So now we're going to work on his arms and his legs. We're going to do one at a time, and whatever you do to one arm, you're going to do to the other. So we're going to add the shadows in with TN2. And again, the shadows would be where his hand is over his arm, where the leotard leaves a bit of shadow, and around his face and his ears, and along the back of his neck, and we'll come down this side of his arm, we'll go into the thumb area, and then in between the fingers where the shadow would be created, and again in the palm of his hand. Now we're going to blend in the TN2 with FS3. So again, we're just going over the bits that we've just coloured, or up to the bits that we've just coloured, and not covering all the fingers because you're just blending. And once you've done that, you're going in with FS2 just to blend in the rest of the fingers and the hand. Now to accentuate the shadows in there, I'm using EB2, and then with the rest of the pens, TN2, FS3 and FS2, I'm going to work my way back and blend into the lightest colour. So with EB2, I'm just adding in a little bit of extra shadow along the darkest parts of his fingers. And around his face and his ears and into his muscular neck, and then blend those areas back in. So there's one of his arms done. Whatever you did to this, you're going to do exactly the same to the other arm, and we'll leave the legs and the chest till later. So go ahead and do the other arm. So now we'll go and do his legs, but we need some shape in these legs because he's a big man. So we're going in with TN2, and we're going to add the shade along each side of his legs and underneath where the leotard would be. So we just need a little bit of shade where his boot flaps are, and I'm going to blend that in with FS3. Now once I've blended in the FS3, I'm going to use FS2 and just blend in the centre part to his leg. But then we need to come back in and give it a little bit more shape with EB2. So again, all I'm doing is going around the outside edge of his leg, along where his boots are, and under his leotard. And I'm going to leave the top part of his leg quite light. And again, I'm going to blend all those colours back in TN2 and FS3. So I've done exactly the same to the other leg, using the EB2 to create the darker shadows and leaving the top part of his knee with the FS2, because that would be in the light. So now we're going to work on this chest area. So again, with TN2, we're going to add the shadows underneath his big chin and along where his leotard is covering his body, and under the pectoral muscles in his chest. And that's going to be blended back with FS3. So again, with EB2, I'm going to add in the really dark shadow under his chin and alongside his leotard, and again into his chest area and along the leotard, and blend those back again with TN2 and FS3. Now once you've done those, to make him really masculine, I'm just taking a fine liner pen, and all I'm doing is adding in little black dots on his chin and on his chest to give him to give him the unshaved look. There he is. So with EB2 now I'm going to work on the boot. So I'm going to start with the left boot, and all I'm doing is adding in EB2 to the boot. Now I'm just adding it around the edges because this is the darker shadow and where the laces are, and on each end of the lace, and I'll explain why in a second. So I've added the shadows into the boots, and I'm just leaving that to dry for a little while, because now when you come back in with the EB2, the areas that you've previously coloured will go a little bit darker when you colour in the rest of the boot. So we're creating the shadow by using the pen over the area that we've done. So by going over the area that you've previously done and coming into the white, you will just create a little bit of extra depth in the darker areas. And then if you leave that to dry, then when you go over the areas again, if you go into the shaded bits again, you can create more depth with your pens, which will give shape to your boots. So we've added some shape to his boots. We're now going to do the same to his body and his leotard. So again, using EB2, add in your first layer of colour to his leotard, and I'm just doing it along the sides and around his fat tummy and under where it would be, and along each side. Now by putting your base colour down and allowing it to dry, and then going back in with the same colour, and you can do it 2 or 3 times, that will just accentuate the shape a little bit more. It just makes it look rounded. So now you can see that he's got a really big fat tummy. Now at the moment he's just stood in mid-air. So again, using EB2, I'm just going to draw a horizon around his feet, and I'm just going to add in some shadow where he would be stood. And then using your other colours, you can blend all that back. Use the chisel end if you want, but just blend all that back so that he's now stood on an area and not just floating in mid-air. Now just to make him pop from the page, if you take your lightest colour, which is, I'm using FS3, and I'm just going to go around all the edge of the figure, and that will just take out any little bits where you've come outside the lines, but it will also make your man stand out from the page, and you're going to go all around the edge.